Willie, what's it been like winding down after the hurling season? Because I'd say it was full on ever since you were appointed.
Yeah, really good. Well, really difficult, I suppose. It's so intense for so long that, and you're in it and you're living it every day. Thinking of, I suppose, how to prepare best and how to move the group forward, and very difficult, I suppose, to come down off that, because it is a roller coaster for a long period of time. And people talk about the inter-county game being all consuming when you're in it, and I suppose I've got experience that this year, and it's very much that, but very enjoyable, but hugely, I suppose, time consuming, and huge amount of energy in it.
Yeah,
Can you
are you
switch
ever?
off at all? Like,
No, it's something that you're living all the time, and you're just kind of consistently concentrating on how best to, as I said, move the group forward individually. What needs to be done, I suppose that was the biggest thing for me as I was going into Laois this year, looking at the group, looking at everything that was available to us, and trying to, I suppose, match that then to drive it forward, which, look, ultimately we didn't do on a results basis, but I think we made big strides as regards just understanding the group more, moving the group forward, and I suppose, yeah, look, we learned a huge amount as a management team.
Yeah, I'm sure you're very frustrated not to be involved in the Joe McDonagh Cup final this weekend. So it'll be Carlow against Offaly at Croke Park, and even missing out on, I suppose, playing at Croke Park would be a big frustration. But what are your thoughts on this match, and how do you see it going? And like, will Offaly get a huge edge, because let's face it, they put out a second string team, effectively throwing the game, whether no matter how they say it, which meant that Carlow got through. So they'll have seen Carlow at full strength.
Yeah, no, just I suppose the first piece is McDonagh, and my experience of it this year as an overall was very impressed as regards the standard of hurling and the standard of player involved in it, and the competitiveness of the Joe McDonagh was hugely impressive for me. Very disappointed, obviously, not to be going to the final this weekend. Everyone loves playing in Croke Park, and look, Laois got a huge bounce off it in 2019 as regards going there and winning, and you can see the same kind of, I suppose, momentum now with Carlow and Offaly going to the final. I think it'll be a very close game. I think it'll be very difficult. Look, ultimately, we were disappointed that Offaly put out their second string against Carlow, but look, that's the nature of McDonagh. They earned the right to do that, so that's 100%. It's okay for them. So it'll be very difficult this weekend to, I suppose, to analyse it really from that match. I think Carlow, you look at their big players, look Chris Nolan, look Marty Kavanagh, look at James Doyle, three top-class inter-county players. And on the other side then, the Offaly, I think Burke, the fullback, is a serious player. Obviously, Sampsons are really, really good players. Owen Cal, really efficient up front, and David Nally, they have a lot of Killian Kiley. They have a lot of really good quality players. So I think this is on a knife edge, and I genuinely think it's a 50-50 game. But look, it's what an experience for those guys going to Croke Park this weekend to represent their county. And as I said, the bounce that Laois got in 19 from it, someone else, Carlow or Offaly, are going to get that this weekend, and that's a huge motivating factor going into this.
Bernie, I'd say you wish you were probably 10 years younger at this stage, so you could be involved.
Yeah, it's a fair game, tough game to call as well. Obviously, you can't really get a read on the two of them. Offaly beat them when they played in the league, and obviously Carlow won comprehensively last. We're chatting to Eddie Brennan there recently, and he just said that something similar happened with Laois in 19. That they gave a good few lads chances in their last game against Westmeath. I think they drew at Westmeath, but they saw pretty much Westmeath's best team and were able to get a bit of a read on them. So Offaly probably have a bit of a read on Carlow, and well, I'm sure Tom Mullally has done his due diligence, and the stats and analysis team have looked at Offaly fairly closely, but Offaly might have a bit of an edge there. Offaly might have a bit of an edge when it comes to depth as well. Carlow have generally used very, very few substitutes throughout the McDonagh Cup, whereas Offaly have finished games strong and they've been able to call on lads from the bench. So I think Carlow might need a bit of a lead or a bit of a buffer going into those closing minutes, and if they don't have it, I think we might just about get over the line. But it's a very, very difficult game to call.
And who do you see, Vernie, as being the key? Like, what are the key matchups here? I know you mentioned to me before Ben Keneally might pick up Marty Kavanagh.
Yeah, Ben actually picked up Chris Nolan when they played 2 weeks ago. Ben was one of the few frontline players that played the last day. He kept Chris Nolan fairly quiet. He could easily move over to Marty now. That'd be an interesting one. I'm not 100% sure who's going to pick up Owen Cattle from a Carlow point of view, but that's a matchup that they have to get right, because I see him at club level there. He kind of just floats around, and you can end up with 4 or 5 from play very, very easily unless he's tagged. Kieran Burke will pick up. Like, listen, between James Doyle, Marty Kavanagh, and Chris Nolan, Ben Keneally will pick up one. Kieran Burke will pick up another. And maybe Jason Sampson, who probably likes to sit back a small bit at centre back, he might pick up the other of those 3 if someone's playing out in the half line. So, like, Willie went through some of the names there. Like, there's a lot of big names there, a lot of really, really big names. And just on the competitiveness of the McDonagh, like, if you had said when Carlow won the inaugural McDonagh in 18 and were competitive in Leinster in 19, if you had said that they wouldn't get back to the McDonagh final until 2023, you'd probably think they're mad. Like, so 3 seasons without even getting back to a final, that'll show you kind of how cutthroat it is. And that's why, and we'll probably talk about this there, that's why Wexford probably, yeah, you'd expect them to come up, obviously, if they get relegated, but it's not a foregone conclusion. When Offaly went down to the Christie Ring, you expected them to bounce back up and didn't even get to a final. So it's, you know what I mean? It's a tough competition usually, where you could throw a blanket over 4 or 5 teams, and that was the case this year.
Willie, what's the standard difference between the teams that are operating in McDonagh versus Liam McCarthy? Like, and I'm asking you based on the league, and I know the league isn't full strength, but like, you were in a group with Tip, Kilkenny, Waterford, Dublin, and Antrim, so you probably have a bit of an insight.
Yeah, no, look, it was. I suppose the athleticism is the real big piece as regards. Like, you look at even going on Thurles that first night, and the work that even Tip had done in the short term between Cal. Like, they were so physically bigger than Leash. Like, they were just bigger men, more power, more just able to get, I suppose, really able to get to the ball, and our lads just weren't physically able to match them. That's number one, the biggest difference. Plus, then I suppose the standard of player, like, a lot of teams, and you look at a Carlow situation, like, they have 5 or 6 genuinely top class inter-county players, and then maybe just the standard drops a little bit as regards around that, probably similar to Offaly and Laois and all the other counties. So it's the standard is a little bit below. But then you look at the Westmeath situation there last week as regards in the Leinster Championship, beating Wexford, albeit a huge shock. They beat us in the relegation final, puck of a ball between it. So, I suppose those gaps can be made up between, so it will be interesting to see as regards Wexford. Obviously a massive weekend for them next week, but I don't think anyone in Wexford envisage them going to the McDonagh level. So that'll be a huge shock to the system, and it'll be ultimately interesting to see if the system stays the same on the back of a big team like Wexford going down, and that's another day's work. But as Michael said there, with Offaly over the last 10 years going to Christie Ring, going right down, it can happen. But I suppose, look, the difference between the top teams, as we know and as we've seen the last while, and I know you've been fairly vocal on the difference between Munster and Leinster, Shane, but there is differences across the board, and it's graded through Munster and Leinster, then right down to the McDonagh.